Thank you. Thank you so much, Alex and Nina, for having us. We prepare a little presentation on mural boards that Elliot is setting up.
Hopefully everyone can see the Miro board we're presenting now.
Yeah, I think maybe zoom in a little bit just so we can start on the left.
So let's come into our title page.
So just to give you like a quick overview of what the session is going to be like, we're going to talk a little bit about who we are and what we do. And also we're going to like have a look at our contemporaries and try to look at their practice style. We're also going to explore like some of the similarities between the projects that we're going to like discuss. And we're also going to try to look into ideas of what's happening in the contemporary landscape of digital programming and like discuss those with you, like maybe towards the end of the session as well. Elliot, if you can. Yeah, thank you so much. Maybe.
Just a quick question. This presentation will be available to us so that you don't have to take notes, or?
I'm making a recording and then.
Yes, I understand, but there won't be a kind of like a handout kind of thing.
We could possibly screenshot together the whole Miro board setup that we're presenting.
That would be good, because then we don't have to take notes, you know.
Yeah, but what we can't do is give you access to the Miro board, just because there's actually other sections of this presentation that were developed for other things. So there's but we can do a sort of put together like a PNG of all the things, like staple it together in one big map.
Super, thank you.
Okay, no problem.
I would say like do take notes if you want to like ask or like come back to something towards the end of the session. It would be like really nice to have these ideas as it started, like as a point to start a conversation with all of you. So yeah, hello, like everyone. Like Alex gave like this really nice introduction to me and Elliot. Like Elliot and I collaborated our Offsite project. Offsite project is an online curatorial platform and that is dedicated to present international artists working with new media technologies and culture. We founded Offsite project in 2017, and since then we have worked with over 120 artists from the States, Europe, the UK, Latin America, Asia, and the Middle East. And we frequently work very closely with these artists, like partnering user interface experience, but also exhibition design, trying to apply like artistic intention in this and like almost like challenging the contemporary landscape where we see like very marketable spaces online. Like we're always like trying to challenge the way we see those spaces that we navigate everyday life with a very artistic intention. And the way we see Offsite project, maybe if you zoom out, it will be like good, because it's a little bit of like a blueprint. We see it as an architectonical online space where we run homepage solo or group exhibitions. We also run downloadable zip exhibitions and a Google Maps residency program. Additionally, we run the like offsite projects that run in a physical space, but with an online itineration. And just to give you like a brief overview of what the homepage exhibitions are. The homepage exhibitions are very interactive experiences where we work very close with the artists to translate their practices from a physical room into an online space, but like working with like different formats that already exist out there. In this case, we're looking at Versailles. This is a solo exhibition by the French artist Lia Porret, where we develop a choose your own adventure game. And we expect the viewer to have a participatory aspect into the work and actually come to the work and compose it as a whole and activated it. And then if we go up a little bit, thank you. We have the downloadable zip exhibitions. The way we see it is as an exhibition that you can take home, but in this case, you take it to your desktop and you download it there, and you can then read our manual on how to read the exhibition or how to navigate it, or completely ignore it and just like compose the exhibition by yourself, or even reuse like some of the elements because they're available like for people to use, and that's how the artists submit them. If we go to the left, we go into the Google Maps residency space that has like this global perspective into the artist practices, and usually comments on how technology is like give us a guide to how to navigate like politics in this like very complex like political scenario that we have at the moment. And now I'm gonna pass it to Elliot to continue with the presentation, unless you want to add something to.
No, I think that's a really good covering of the three main strands, and that kind of leads nicely into what I want to talk about and where I want to take us with the second part of the presentation, which is how do we start to categorize and understand digital art spaces. They're not so easy to comprehend in the same manner that we would understand a physical gallery. We might go, oh, it's an institution, it's a non-profit gallery, it's funded by here, or it's a sales gallery, it's blue chip, it's an emergent gallery. We don't have that same set of terms, and so understanding what is happening with the online digital art sector and how curators and gallerists are operating there requires us to start developing a new lexicon and a new understanding. And so we've been asking ourselves how we map this and how we categorize this for quite a while. And what we've come up with is a series of terms that broadly help us categorize what any given gallery space is, and then a set of characteristics that are present within those spaces. And here we see the characterization for offsite projects. So we have a certain color marker, and we have a set of emojis here, which I'm going to take you off and up to understand. So bear in mind with us, this is an evolving codex. This is something that we're adding to and amending constantly, but it is a guide that we're using to start to understand our contemporaries. You will see here that we have 5 different categorizations of spaces. We have online galleries and online projects, and there is a slight difference to those two, which is in that a project space is possibly initiated and coded for one specific reason with one intention in mind, where a gallery has a bit more flexibility and programming to it. We have digital art producers, which can be individuals or collectives operating online and physically, creating situations, scenarios, workshops with digital artists, maybe making brand establishments. We have the move of the physical gallery online. The net artist Olia Lililina kind of characterized this in the COVID period as forced net art, but there are a good number of examples of galleries that have naturally shifted themselves online and created an online presence. And there are, of course, a lot of galleries who have responded to COVID and sort of unnaturally moved themselves on. Adjacent to that, we have the online viewing room. This isn't the term you've come across. It was coined in relationship to the move of art fairs going online and a certain sort of aesthetic that grew up around that time of either rendered or highly polished photographs of virtual gallery spaces where you could have some combination of chair or table to make it look like a realistic setting, and which the work was projected at scale into. So this was a solution put forward by places like Art Basel and Frieze. Then on our second line along, we have info hubs, and I use this term sort of broadly. They do a lot more than that. They are not like a tourist information center. They are some central connective tissue for the online communities to channel through, sites that reshare information and help communicate. They form an infrastructure for online galleries, online artists, digital artists that could be seen as akin to the gallery map. You know, the sort of map that is produced for any city to say, you can go to these galleries here, here, and here. This is how you get between them. There's a similar function. Then we have the exhibition platform, which is would be a site which develops tools by which exhibitions can be built. Biennials and fairs, there are a number of those developing out at the moment in response to the growing digital sector. The quasi-museological, so spaces that take characteristics of the museum codes and conventions and import them on, but without so much of the requirements, the board of trustees, the acquisition policies, the care and conservation, those issues that are an administrative weight for museums. And then we have NFT sales spaces, and those two, online viewing rooms and NFT spaces, we haven't done so much documentation of yet. Now, within those categories and broadly spread across them, you find a number of different characteristics, and we've given each characteristic an emoji to help us map them across the spaces. So you have online exhibitions, you have offline exhibitions, IRL physical shows, you have residency programs, you have publications, you have open, meaning that it is welcoming submissions rather than closed sort of curatorial modes. You have sales models. Now, this is kind of interesting in that traditionally online spaces have not been so sales orientated, and so you don't see this as coming so much, but recently some young curators are kind of importing digital art traditional sales models or new sales models into the digital scene and figuring out how that could work. On the right-hand column, UX and UI builds, so builds that work within sort of the structure of the screen versus 3D builds, exhibition builds that utilize three-dimensional views. They play off the idea of video games. The little eye emojis we're using for AR and VR practices that are worked with. And then we have things like academic writing, interviews, talks and workshops as other facilities that the online gallery might participate in. And from that sort of lexicon codex, I want to show you a set of different spaces and talk through them very quickly. So just let me zoom out here. This is our overview. So we've got a big sample here. I'll try to cover, let's see how I can get on with the next sort of 6 minutes. I'll pick my way through them a little bit. So you might be familiar with some of these spaces, you might not. Is This It is an online gallery run by Bob Bicknell-Knight, who's a graduate of Chelsea College of Art. He started this during his studies. They have a very broad purview of activities. So Bob does online shows, but he does a lot of offline shows. He's opened up his online exhibition building. So for a period, he was having every second exhibition curated by someone else. He does a lot of interviews, but he also channels that towards publications, physical publications that sell. And he has had a residency program running there. So there's a broad range of activities that are explored within that one gallery. I mean, and this is, bear in mind, one individual running an online space and covering what would be achieved by a large gallery infrastructure, typically. So there are certain things to note about the affordances of being online, the flexibility of doing something there because you have the immediacy to work and you're not maybe burdened by so much day-to-day care of the space, invigilation and those things. Antimateria, so this is Doreen Rios, and she is based in Mexico. She's a Mexican national. She teaches, but her project she started while she was doing her master's in the UK is this site, and they are specifically good at being the entry point between, or a connection point between a sort of Western English language discourse about digital arts and the Latin speaking world. They are literally the gateway there. They do a weekly Semana program where they feature an online show, they cover it and they communicate it, they translate the press release. But they also do academic work, they do interviews. She has a specialism in AR practices as well, and sometimes the work manifests itself in physical exhibitions. Deformal, this is Vincent C.Y. Chen and Wednesday Kim, based in New York and California respectively. They have built up their way of working and networking around a long-going interview program. So they interview digital creators, they invite people to submit for that interview process, and that has helped them spill out into a whole range of other sort of practices, be it online exhibitions, some physical exhibitions, exhibitions that have worked with 3D design, a residency program, and talks and workshops as well. So they started with a sort of interview process at the core of what they did, and they have let that build around, and they've let that become their networking system, which is an important factor. Silicon Valley, another like high network ability organization run by Wade Wallerstein, and what they've done is they have continuously reposted and become this high network social media animal, pushing out and representing the digital art community in a similar manner to Deformal, allowing that to become a way for them to become a recognized expert, and building off exhibitions and residency programs and talks out of that, using it as a connective mode. It's an interesting characteristic, and one that we might come to later, about how networked systems allow a digital curator to quickly aggregate a large following and put them at the heart of hundreds of individuals, rather than sort of the old-fashioned model of curating where you might be representing 20 artists. Arbeit on Screen is an example of a gallery which is traditionally has been brick and mortar with a very digital focus, and I think it was in 2017 or 2018 they started their online version of the gallery with a parallel program of content, but they push so much brilliant stuff there. It talks, workshops, UX designed exhibitions, 3D exhibitions. There's a huge amount that gets compacted into their space, and they're producing a lot. Just loud a bit. Her Visions, a really nice practice by Zyber Jabar, which has specialized historically in digital femme-focused practices. So uses Instagram and social media to represent a lot of what's going on inside that sort of subsection of the digital arts practices, and then builds connections between those artists and producers. You know, that might be sort of a relying on sort of fashion publications or the music industry, but also has started to venture into a lot of AR-based work, specializing in that, in face filters in particular, and built expertise there, as well as starting to tease out some economic models which might work for the sales of digital arts. I'll talk a little bit about New Art City. Sorry, I just realized I haven't put the full little lexicon on there. New Art City is a particularly interesting place to look at if you're interested in building your own 3D online exhibitions. So they are an exhibition platform that allows people to build three-dimensional virtual gallery spaces that are very much led with environmental design. So you can kind of submit them to have access to their server space and their tools. They respond to curatorial and artistic needs by developing really developed world-building software that is all done live in relationship to their server. So you're not building on your computer and then uploading it. You are making the changes online, and it's being updated in real time, and then you can set the show to be published. Really brilliant to go and investigate. The Wrong, something that I'm sure some of you will be familiar with, a Biennale program that kind of is the centralizing hub that brings together a lot of this activity, has recently ventured out into doing its own sort of TV network. Karaff, an online digital art fair that has had VR iterations and physical iterations, and again is kind of finding out how a lot of the practitioners in this sector can start monetizing, can start shifting away from old models where online practice was sort of isolated from the market, and figuring out what the ways of sales would be. Going Away TV, Mark Blaisdell and Alexander Harding. It's a non-stop streaming 24-hour show. It's a really interesting model of exhibition. Virginia Bianchi Gallery, an Italian curator, who again, she has been doing experiments with online exhibitions, with VR, AR exhibitions, but centrally trying to figure out how to monetize those. New Mystics, this is an incredibly interesting program because it's done by artists writing text, but then a generative adversarial network utilizing those texts to create new formations of text. This is very much a project. It's a singular instance of something that's happening. I think that got me around it. I'm sorry if that was a bit of a blitz. We can come back to some of that stuff later. What I want to zoom in next from that sort of purview, and just to note, this is a small fraction of the online gallery art world. if we were to represent everything that's going on, I would imagine it would be about 10 times what's here. The Wrong Biennale will be opening in November. I would recommend you going and seeing just how many participant organizations are involved in that. And that won't even be everyone who's listed here. That will be a subsection. Next, I want to talk a little bit about sector characteristics and mediums. It's a little bit hard to get into this, a little of a network map, but I'm going to start at the center here. Heavy social media users, point of entry. So a lot of digital arts practices are reliant upon centralized points like Instagram to get things together. There is an element that there's a support system going on here. Maybe this is what I'll focus on just based on the time, because it links into what I want to say next. A lot of the online digital practices become an early entry point for young artists who are leaving maybe their BA or their MA, and they are a space that is easy to enter, that is welcoming, affording, gives time, and helps promote those cultural issues. In that sense, there's an anti-hierarchical nature, there's an anti-institutional quality to all of these places. There are peer-to-peer elements, as well as a sort of very exploratory nature about sort of identity, but also technology. And I won't run too far into all of this. It's a lot to digest in. I think we've only got half an hour, but we can come back round. All of that is to say, this sector that we're trying to give you a kind of a representation of, hopefully a scattershot one, is really supporting emergent artists and helping them gain recognition and being a stepping up gap to the brick and mortar galleries, which would be the traditional first tier of an art world ladder. I think at this stage, I'll pass back over to Peter for the third section of the talk, which is on future trends and digital programming, but very happy to go back into any of that stuff during the Q&A section, because I know we probably packed in too much to talk about in half an hour alone.
And from all the different ecologies that Elliot was just like highlighting, we went back to them and then did a couple of analyses, like trying to do trend forecasting, but also like trying to produce like different clusters of information of what's happening with digital programming nowadays, and how like some of these sections that we're going to see are also being accelerated by the pandemic and the NFT market. So we're going to see like a lot of the digital programming that has been influenced by the pandemic, and also the new emergent market of digital art practices. So if we go to the first one, that is like volumetric curating. With volumetric curating, again, we have the Rome Biennale that exhibits around like 40-50 international projects during the session. Also, we have WTF. That was one of the first exhibitions that emerged during the pandemic as a response of the pandemic, is mainly based on gifts. And we also have Going Away TV, that is this like 24-hour programming that Elliot was mentioning earlier. And some of the things that we see emerging for volumetric curating are one, like they are very dependent on social media, and they are especially relevant for social media and how like social media works on accumulating information by segments and also by context. And they also have a network value, where all the connections and the different artists that are part of the exhibition like bring the value into like cultural value, but personal value, and also the visitors' value that the exhibition is going to have. They are also too large to visit, which is like very reminiscent of museums like the Louvre Museum, or these museums that you have like to come and revisit to actually see the whole exhibition, and also cause a little bit of like visual tiredness and physical tiredness. And it also challenged the way institutions produce exhibitions, where we have more like a very specific segment of cultural artifacts, instead of like a quite broad cluster of cultural assets that respond to a thematic. They also work to survey a cultural movement or a cultural moment where we might not remember all the artists that are part of the show. We will remember like some of the sentiments that these artists were expressing as a collective. They also obviously like take the collective over individual identity. And as what I was saying, like you wouldn't remember like specific artists unless by something really accurate, but you will remember the ideas or the thematics that they were like circulating. In the case of now WTF, it actually like brings the artists into different like thematical rooms. And also they bring a high capacity to exhibit it, like hundreds of artists in just one movement. That is not very common in the physical realm. And they're also very low cost, like you can, in comparison to shipping like 100 artists from like different venues, and now like post-pandemic, and maybe with Brexit here in the UK, like you would imagine like shipping 150 artworks for different locations across the world to produce an exhibition. So maybe if we go down like to sellable exhibitions. Yeah, as I was like mentioning with the pandemic, we also have like, all these pressures of like shifting sales from a physical space to an online environment, and also with the NFT marketplace expanding into more general audience, like it has like caused the development of like different marketable shows. And we have like a couple of examples that I'm not gonna delve much into because we're already a little bit short of time, but you can like come back and revisit it. And we're actually citing one of the projects that we did early this year. That was a physical show, but where we were selling digital works in a gallery in New York City. So for sellable exhibitions, the group show is seen almost like a singular artwork where you might be even like purchase the whole environment as an experience, or you might even like be paying to go into the artworks. Also, art making takes a social function. And like some of the works are also co-author between the artists and the curators, because we have this relationship of a galleries where our galleries will inform into the work of an artist, or which works of the artist like get spread with the public. And then the digital objects become files, because that's how the transaction is made. Like you will get access to the digital experience purchasing one file or a set of files. And we also have the NFT marketplace that it depends on different digital coins, and you will have like to purchase the works through the blockchain. And then we have access to smart contracts and contracts that also kind of challenge the way like physical galleries sell, where sometimes you will have even profits for the artist after like the second or the first like purchase of the work that wouldn't happen in the first or secondary market in a physical gallery. Like the artist wouldn't get any profit for the secondary market, but actually with NFTs, like some of the artists like continue have a profit after the sale is done, like in posterity. And also we have like traveling exhibitions or edition of exhibitions that we were saying like things are being sold as a file, but those files also have like different editions. And again, like we have in here the collective over individual identity, because also the value of the works, it's better if they have been exhibited with collectives, but also if they are sold in a platform that like exhibits multiple artists, because again, we have this point of contact through social media, or like the more notes you have, the more access to different audiences you have. So now if we go down a little bit, and another trend that we identify is agency and video games logics that actually, if you want to delve a little bit more of it, like Serpentine recently released like their almost cultural forecast into the future of cultural institutions, like looking into a post-pandemic world. And they are very like video game experience based into what could be achieved like for bigger museums or institutions, like looking into the future on how to create like a social environment that like a lot of digital formats lack, because they are just presented instead of being connected. And with video games and the video game logics, as I was mentioning with the example of Lia Poré, like the audience becomes the person that activates the work, and actually the audience is needed for the work to be like completed or developed. And like some examples that delve more into the aesthetics of it is that they choose your own adventure games where you even like choose how the artwork is going to be unfolded. And as an example of this, we have like Kaken's, one of Kaken's latest work, like Wisdom for Love 3.0, where it takes you to a different set of alternatives into their video work, but depending on the choices you make through the game. And then we have a lot of avatar creation where the audience can come and create an avatar and then habitate the 3D worlds. And we have a lot of retro game aesthetics and also systems being built into artistic practices or artistic systems to video game logics. And also we have first and like third person experience. That is what I was mentioning, that you can even physically feel how you complement the work, or how you can habitate the work, or how you are advancing through these different visual experiences. And we have a larger spaces that require choice from the viewer, whereas like some of the other examples that we saw, you will see the work as a whole. In here, you have to navigate the space and actually make choices that you will have to make, like attending a museum or an exhibition where you will see certain artworks, but then like some of the stuff like you won't pay much attention or you won't come back to. And we have a lot of world building and also generative works that these are not the cases, but some of Kaken's work, like it's generative, and as you travel around the world, like it will generate like different alternatives and views. And the narrative is more distributed, which means that again, like you choose how the work is going to be developed as you navigate it. And sometimes you will have objectives that are very similar to video games, but like in most works, like for example, Conning and with the Spirit World, you're just like going around it. But in the case of Kaken, you will actually have to make choices to get the objective of get all the tokens from the game, or to go into certain areas. So if we go up a little bit. We also have algorithm generated images that are generated through GAN mostly. That's one of the most common formats. And that is generated adversarial networks, when we have like two intelligence like talking to each other and disseminated information, and from that creating a very specific image, which we can see an example on the right with Deborah Silva and the project that we developed with Agorama, when she's sourcing different images from sculptors from across like different museums to create like the image of the new sculptor, a contemporary sculptor of a female figure. And from this, as I was saying, we have like Centurion creation, where the intelligences will like mix images and create their own very particular composition. We also have data sets, because the intelligence are like taking different data sets to create these new images or works. And it also creates unexpected results, because every time we put even if we play with the same data sets, if we change the orders of the images, we will have like very different results. And it really evokes like to surrealist movements, and the way like they were playing with chants or like practices like from a lot of the 20th centuries, including the like how they like a lot of the pieces were composing collectively. And it also employs like kind of an anti-institutional attitude to it. It's like, for example, again, in the case of like Deborah Silva, she's challenging the way institutions have collected female sculpture, and she's challenging the way that we as a collective, as a result of that, see female sculpture like being represented. and she's trying to imagine a new way of like seeing this sculpture. And again, it reflects on big tech systems and like ways of thinking and the way data is also being viewed by like bigger corporations. And we also I'll just go back into the new mystics example. That is the one that Elliot was mentioning, that they are not playing with the image, but more with the text that express information about the artworks. So now if we go to the last part, it's hybrid experiences that we have been mostly been developed through augmented reality experiences. And it's a little bit what Elliot was talking about, face filters, but we also have development of apps or even like festivals around augmented reality. And it's in a way, it's kind of replacing street art, but a lot of like public programming. And that also significantly like changes the cost of fabrication of works. Again, as I was saying, like if you're gonna make like a group show in a public space, and if you're incorporated 10 different artists, it will be like relatively more like the cost will be lower, like in comparison to create a like very like big format sculptures or elements across the city. And again, is the question of kind of having this anti-system attitude, because you can position some of these sculptures in places that you wouldn't be able to do in the physical work. And you also possess at the same time quality of festivals in the way like people interact with the artworks, like seeing them more as an experience than as a precious object, or like trying to behave differently around them, like people actually interact with them in a very different manner. And it's very screen based, like the engagement really depends on your phone and even the quality of your internet. So it will say it's not 100% accessible either. It's heavily experiential because they usually will have a second element of music, and the pieces will respond to the audience. So it will actually download live, like trying to respond to your face movements or the movement of your body. And the reason that why they're popular, again, is like based on social media, because they're highly Instagrammable. And some of these augmented reality experience even have like shot systems where you can like take photos of the experience you're having with your phone. And yeah, this is again like just a selection that we try to make for the time we have for the session. But if you like continue exploring the examples that we have, like you can bring like other alternative trends or ideas around digital programming. And